Hi, Jin.
Hi Farhad, how are you?
Thank you. Good.
Good.
How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Thank you for finding time to meet. You have flown here from Amsterdam, and I know that you've done quite a lot of continent hopping in your life. Can you share, for the starter, a bit about where have you lived in your life?
Sure, so initially, obviously, I was born in Korea, so Korea briefly, and then I came to the States in Los Angeles, where I spent most of my life. And after working more than few years, at some point I wanted to work abroad and went to work in Asia for about 7 years and came back to US, and about 8 years ago I came to Europe and been here since.
Asia, you mean you went back to South Korea and yeah?
For 3 years in Korea, 3 years in Singapore to run a regional Asia Pacific wide role, and also bid in Australia and bid in China.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Quite a lot. And
Yeah.
what brought you to Europe?
Essentially, I had a offer from artificial intelligence company to join their company as their COO to help them scale beyond the Benelux area.
Yeah.
And I'm actually quite happy to say not only did we achieve but over-exceeded goal. So we almost increased the revenue almost 3x in about 2.5 years. And bulk of our revenue actually came internationally.
Yeah, okay. So you've been a COO of an AI company, which brought you to Europe.
Yes.
Can you share a bit also what are your priorities in life today? Where does your time mostly go into?
So my priority today, so if I step back for a second, I think there's three things that are very important to me. And number one thing is, of course, continue to grow and learn. The second thing is to share resources. And thirdly, to have fun doing it. And so
Yeah.
having said that, what I do mostly these days is focus on two things. One is to work with startup and scale-ups. And then secondly, to look for an investment opportunity and work with the companies where we made an investment. And the reason why I find these so much more interesting than, let's say, just a regular corporate job is because I'm able to learn constantly from the founders and the team members and the companies and the ecosystem I have, such as Cocoon, from you and your team, and be able to share my experiences and share different resources. And resources could be knowledge, it could be time, it could be experiences, it could be money, whatever it is. And I do believe that when you share something, it actually gives you greater happiness than when you just receive. So I find it very valuable. And then obviously, if you're not having fun, life is not worth living, right? And I really feel that working with startups and scale-ups and founders and accelerators, such as Cocoon and other accelerators, gives me opportunity to achieve all three goals.
Yeah, okay. So you are now based in?
Netherlands, in The Hague. I lived in Amsterdam for about 7 years, and I moved to The Hague about a year ago. And it's very close to the beach, a 12-minute bike ride away from the beach. So, yeah.
You strike me as a person who has quite broad experiences, and when I think of the dimensions, one is that this geographic, you've been in Asia, in US, also in Europe now, so you have those perspectives, and then you are a mentor through Cocoon with scale-ups, through ACE in Netherlands with startups, so you also have this type of, and I know that in your past career you also worked with corporates, so very broad experience. Can we touch a bit on this company types experience for, let's say, a scale-up management team member who's listening this and thinking, okay, have we outgrown the startup thinking and going to scale-up thinking, but we dread to become maybe huge companies, bureaucratic type thinking type of organization. Can you share your main experience points or takeaways that you see how the scale-up management teams need to change their thinking when outgrowing from the startup mode of operation? So let's say the team is already growing, the seed round or late seed round has been raised already. What are the typical things to avoid, typical things to know for founders in this stage?
Yep, that's a great question. I think there's many questions in that question. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I had the privilege of working in North America, US primarily, most of my career, and obviously in Asia and Europe. And there is definitely differences in business culture, not only just country cultures or regional cultures, but difference in business cultures. And for companies that are looking to go global, absolutely they have to be aware of the cultures that they're expanding into. But I think equally important is they need to understand what their culture is, corporate-wise or country-wise, both actually.
Yeah.
And to your point, one of the first job I had was a anti-submarine warfare specialist it was a defense contractor for US Navy. Very interesting work. And then secondly, I joined Accenture and Ernst & Young as management consultant, where I got to work with Fortune 500 global companies. So ones such as American Express, NASA, JPL, and eventually Samsung's and Deutsche Bank of the world. And indeed, one of the things that I learned about working with those large global companies is that they no longer are able to depend on people. So they have a very strong processes without which they cannot scale. And I think that is, among other differences, some of the main differences with, let's say, startups, where still it's very people-centric, but they need to, at some point, if they want to scale, they need to start thinking about processes. So to give an example, when we were about 60 employees, I had an employee, somebody in my team actually, who was traveling from Netherlands to Switzerland. But he decided, instead of flying over there in 1 hour and stay one day or a couple of days with a hotel and flying back, he decided to rent a sports car. Not an ordinary car, sports car. So it took him like 3-4 days to get to Switzerland. Although you could have gotten there one day, he just decided to stop here and stop there. So it took him 3-4 days. Did his work for one day and took him 3 to 4 days coming back to the Netherlands. And the bill was quite high, because the car was like 200 euros a day.
Sounds eccentric.
Yeah, so CFO looks at this and comes to me and says, "Hey, Jin, this guy's on your team. What the hell? Did you approve this?" I go, "Approve? I didn't even know he was going."
Yeah.
Tom, he used to work for PwC. And so Tom, the CFO, and he and I go to our CEO. "Hey, Mr. CEO, we need to have a process around this kind of thing. So we need to have expense policies." And he says, "No, we want employees to make their own choices and do the right thing." I go, "Do you think spending 2,000 euros instead of 600 euros of doing the right thing?" But he says, "It's a bad decision on his part, but I don't want my company to be bureaucratic and become like corporate-like."
What was the team size then?
60.
60?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I totally respected his perspective at that point anyway, so he wanted to maintain certain culture of the company. Having said that, when company became 140 and more people, obviously such lacking process doesn't really work, because not everybody thinks the same way. And eventually, people who want to take advantage of the system joins as well. And yeah, point is, I think it's important to have these processes in place to make it more scalable and to have it more equitable for everyone.
Yeah. So what is that moment in time or in team size when you need to switch from ad hoc and intuitive approaches to having processes in place?
I think that's a great question. In general, of course, depending on the culture and industry and so forth, but in general, I think 80 to 100 is basically time when you realize that you have to act differently and you have to organize differently.
Yeah.
Another thing that's related to culture, and maybe from founders' perspective, founders' ego, is so when we were 60 employees, 80 employees, we were losing it, but every Friday we used to have this beer, what we call excuse my Dutch accent, I don't have it. I don't know, I can't pronounce it properly. It's called Borel, but basically it's every Friday afternoon around 4 p.m. Everybody comes to this cafeteria or whatever for beer and little snacks.
Yeah.
When we were up to about 60, there wasn't any problem. Most people came, and afterwards some people went out to have dinner by themselves, and founders found it very comforting that it was like almost like a family-like atmosphere. But once we hit 100, 120, founders didn't even know some of the employees, and they say, hi, and go, do you work for us? And they were really sad when we had 4 or 5 people show up in this Friday event, this Borel beer snack session. And they took it personally.
Yeah.
They were, go ahead.
Yeah, so meaning that I hear you saying that 80 to 100 is that break point when you can't go past it. But and that means that at that moment you already need to have more a machine with humans in rather than completely humanly led when we just agree how we do it each time and so on. But when is it when you need to start thinking about those things already? And what are the typical blind spots or mistakes that founders in the earlier stages make? Because I think that we already set direction of things already quite early, and then later we deal with the consequences. Of course, we can deal with them, but better is not to deal with.
Yeah. It's, again, a great point. I think you can start thinking about organization the moment you start the company. So I think there's a 5 main departments you need to think about. So number 1 is the product development team. Second thing is the production team, basically engineers or factory or whatever, whoever it is to actually make the program or widgets that you want to sell. Third area is the sales. Fourth area is the services, possibly if you need them. And then last area is the support. And to support these 5, you need the management team, the IT team, the HR team, and the administration, including the finance team. If any of these are missing, then it's like having a table with 2 or 3 legs, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And initially, when you, let's say, have only 3 people, one person can wear multiple hats. But you can start thinking about in terms of these structures. So as you hire, you start thinking about where do you hire these people into which team, for example.
I think this what you mentioned now, that we know that there are, let's say, 5 roles but 3 people. This means that someone is filling two
Exactly.
chairs. That makes it as if easier in the beginning to deal with stuff because you don't need to coordinate with anyone. But later, when you hire more people, you need to know which hat you are wearing, because you cannot, for example, you cannot make a decision wearing your CEO's hat which concerns marketing, because as a CMO you have a different level of decision making, right, compared to a CEO. And I've seen sometimes CEOs who wear multiple hats running into a problem that they always approach decision making as if they in all decisions have the final say, and this creates this bottleneck situation then in the company.
Absolutely, great point, and that's where culture comes in.
The what company do you mean culture. With it?
So if, according to Erin Myers, she wrote the book called Cultural Map. There are 8 different areas in a corporate culture that sort of defines what your culture is. One of them is communication. How do you communicate? Is it low context or high context? So I can give an example. For example, in Netherlands, it's very low context. So what they say, they mean.
Yeah.
In, let's say, India or even Asia, some parts of Asia, it's very flowery. They're not so direct, but I remember, for example, an executive from US flew to meet with a Samsung executive, and the Samsung executive was very unhappy with our company. So I was representing the company, Siebel Systems. It's a US-based company. Samsung was very unhappy with our Siebel Systems because we really did what was right for us, but not for the customers. even though we're a CRM company.
I hope you don't get sued for this.
They don't exist anymore. They got
Okay.
bought out by Oracle. And Samsung guy says, he says, in Korea, McDonald's has like kimchi burgers. And she wanted to laugh, but she couldn't because it felt impolite. And she had no idea what he was talking about.
Yeah.
Had it been Netherlands, would have told the executive, you guys suck. You need to do this and do this to be successful with us in this country. But instead, he's giving all this.
But what was the point of this kimchi burger? I also didn't understand.
Yeah, exactly. His point is you need to localize your business practice to a local country, not run it as if this is still United States.
Okay.
That was his point with the kimchi burger.
I remember in one movie there was a phrase where one guy told to other, "It is what it is." But what it meant is that you have been ordered to be killed. What the message was, it is what it is. Speaking of directness of speech. So it's one of the 8 regarding the company
Communication,
culture.
high context, low context. There's a decision making. How do you make decision? There is a confrontation, like French. I don't know if it's true. They apparently start with no, and they start very argumentative ways. Whereas other countries, they're very polite to disagree.
Wait, let's talk a bit about this confrontation. A very interesting topic.
Yes.
I've seen 2 extremes and of course then the middle ground in between, but one extreme being CEO or other C-level person who finds it hard to confront people. So just feel so uncomfortable and then hold into and then create various systems around to address the issue and whatnot. And the other extreme would be to lash out at the smallest irritation and then people walking on tiptoes around and trying to avoid to step on painful issues. Yeah, anything from your experience, maybe what could help one or other extreme to get more into the middle ground, and what is the middle ground? What is a productive and constructive way how to
So I think, again, this goes back to the culture, and one of the most important aspects of a culture is to provide a safe space. So no matter what an employee or what somebody may say or do, there is no retribution or I'm going to get back at you kind of attitude. There needs to be a safe space to underline the other 8 types of cultural breakdowns that we talked about. And once that's established, it doesn't matter if one might yell at somebody. And I think actually, in a way, yelling and screaming internally in a room is okay.
It's healthier than keeping it inside and
exactly.
keeping grudges.
Yes, exactly. So, for example, if you got 5 people in the management team, they can yell and scream all they want, but once they decide on something, they need to come out from that team meeting and speak in the same voice, meaning once you can disagree with each other, but once you agree to something, then they say that something to the rest of the company.
But it makes people to feel afraid that if we will be aggressive or yell or whatnot, the other person will become resentful. Maybe they won't say it, but this will impact the relationship for worse. And then you mentioned that you can do it if you have built a safe space.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a bit?
So, for example, let's say you start yelling at me, and I would understand because I think we have enough relationship developed and I know you enough that this is a momentary thing, that you're passionate about things that you are yelling about. It's not that...
Or I'm having a meltdown.
Yeah, you're having a meltdown. But I think important thing is not focus on the person and insult the person, but focus on the topic, or even maybe, focus on the topic. Let's say, for example, this coffee doesn't taste good, and then I start yelling at you.
Yeah.
But I can say, this coffee sucks, and blah, blah, blah. But the moment I insult you, it changes the whole dynamics, I think.
Okay.
So the moment you insult me and say, Jin, you're such an idiot, then that's a no-go.
Yeah.
But we can yell and scream about, this coffee is, you might say, this is great coffee. I might say, this is sucky coffee.
Okay, coffee is
Yeah.
a bit simpler example.
Right.
But if we let's take an example Yeah, there's a C-level meeting and people looking at the metrics and the customers are leaving, so the churn is absolutely in red. And so what the team is saying that the product is not what customers expect it to be, yes? And of course at one moment they say, but you, the product team, are to blame. This is the outcome of your work. Customers don't love it, it looks ugly and it doesn't work and whatnot. And so at this moment what the CPO hears most probably is that you are no good, you cannot do your job properly, meaning maybe this is not said in these words, but anyway, he most probably or she hears this. And if it's said with aggressive tone, then you are saying that it won't affect the relationship unless you say that you are dumb.
Yeah. If there is a trust and respect already in the relationship, I think you can get away with it. An example, let's step back and not use corporate situation, but let's use our personal situation. So our wife, girlfriend, whatever.
Yeah.
The moment I say to my wife, that you're stupid, then I'm done for.
Yes. Yeah.
And I never said that, but so what we do is we focus on the action, right?
But what if you say,
go ahead.
What if you say that these pancakes are not edible? The ones you just
that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, of course, I don't say this pancake is not edible. You know, I don't yell, but I say quietly, oh, this is really not that good. And we do actually. That's a great example you bring up because she wants me to rate every food that she makes, and I'm quite honest. I say this is good. Oh, this is not so good. And she's momentarily hurt, I know, when I say, oh, this is not that good.
Yeah.
But she appreciates the feedback, the honesty behind the feedback.
We will get to the family situation. Okay. I want to get there, but thanks for bringing it. But just for a moment to bring back to, so we have that board meeting and where the concern, I'm saying politely, the concerns have been raised about the quality of the product and whatnot. And now let's assume the CPO really takes it personally, completely insulted, and okay, if you don't like what I'm doing, I'm out of here, and or just opposite is like sits like turns inwards. Yes.
Yeah.
What to do in such situation? Because if someone is taking things personally, it's very hard to confront such a person, such person's outputs. But if you cannot healthily confront the outputs or the attitude or whatnot, then, in my opinion, this is not a healthy atmosphere, healthy culture, yes, because it's obviously not working, so someone's responsible for it.
Yep, and it's obviously also not safe, right?
Can you
in the sense that
safe that I cannot confront that.
Exactly. Yeah. And then so it's unsafe for both parties. So once that's blowing up, it's unsafe because the other party is taking it so personally, and this person is now already grinding the axe and sharpening the knives.
So what do you suggest to a CEO who is in a situation where another colleague is taking things personally? Yes, and so what do you do then?
Yeah. So if you're the CEO, is the one that's like doing the blow up, I think it is best if you can have a private talk with the person and maybe even apologize for blowing up.
If the other colleague is taking objective things personally and becoming resentful and upset and whatnot.
I think two things. Number one is try to have as open dialogue as possible.
Yeah.
Meaning, okay, please feel free to say anything that he or she has in her or his mind. And I think the best thing to do is just listen without defense or anything. Second thing is, if that person just is beyond salvage, then I think it's time to consider different alternatives. Can this person work with somebody else? Or maybe it's time to go separate ways?
But now let's think it a bit further.
Yeah.
What if the CPO, well, I chose randomly a CPO, but it can be any other role.
Absolutely.
What if the CPO is absolute genius in how he does the work, but now the company has grown. In the early years, he was or she was the one thinking through things and working on the things, but today he has a 20 people team in his department whom he's leading, and the teamwork's outcome is this mediocre thing, but he still looked at as the genius, yes? And now the rest of the management feel that we can't let him go because he's such a superstar, yes?
Yes. And actually this happens more frequently than I think one would like to admit.
Exactly, that's why I brought this question.
And I think there's a couple of things that can be done. Number one is to identify what this person is really good at and tailor the role for this person. Let's take, for example, what Accenture used to do. They used to have this single model fits all model back in the days. I won't say what year it was, but way back in the days. So basically, in order for you to become partner, you basically had to be able to sell.
Yeah.
But as a consulting company, they needed some real technical geniuses. But technical geniuses typically are not very good at sales or sometimes not even managing people. So in earlier days, these people were just let go. They climb up to a certain level and they could not make partners and they go somewhere else, but with somewhere else they could be wildly successful. What they eventually realized is that we cannot lose these people. And they're not good at sales, but they're geniuses in technology. So what they do is they carve out this role, not a partner, but they call them director or whatever it is, that name, get pretty much similar salaries and prestige and so forth, but their role is not to sell. So they had defined a specific role for these people. Sometimes there's not even a team underneath them because they're not a good manager and they don't want to manage. And as you probably also faced many people who don't want to manage. They just want to be an individual contributor. And so I think you have to recognize the strengths of the individual and create a role that fits that person's personality or their preferred way of work and let them be successful. Basically create an environment where they can be successful.
So I understand what you're saying and it sounds reasonable. From on the receiving end, imagine this person is leading 20 people department and now what he sees is happening most probably from his perspective, I am being promoted away. Yes, to be promoted away equals to be promoted down, basically, to many people. So how should the company approach the communication of this? What would you say? How would you approach it? So that, because I know one of the rules that I've heard is that do not hope that if you downgrade someone in a role, that he will be very happy and performing unless he is a very mature person. Yes. That's why usually people are being promoted away, not that they're being demoted in the structure.
So I suppose indeed it matters how you position this promotion or demotion. And it also, again, it's like I think being an effective manager is like playing chess. So you have to recognize the strengths of each individual. As a CEO of a large corporation, you don't have the luxury, obviously, because if you got to manage more than 100 people, then you don't have the luxury of knowing what each person's strengths and weaknesses are. So it's more like a checkers, as they say. But if you have, for your immediate teams, I think you have to understand what makes them tick and what is their strengths and what is their weaknesses and how to create a message that's acceptable. And I think one of the best things to do is ask the person, hey, we'd like to put you in this new role. How do you want this to be communicated?
Oh, yeah. But this also rings me that this means that the CEO needs to really look the reality in the eye to admit what is the reality about the strengths and weaknesses, not what I would want it to be, but what it is, and also to follow it through time, because what was reality 2 years ago with a 50 people team might not be reality today with 100 people team. And then to feel okay to be inconvenient to the other person, because if I come to you and say, okay, things are, it is what it is, it's not working at the moment,
Right.
so I'm being inconvenient to you,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm doing a service actually, right? Because
Yeah, maybe it's a more of a euphemism, but when we used to fire people, the justification was that, well, this person may be brilliant in other things, but this person just is not the fit for our company in this particular role.
Yeah.
So we're doing this person a favor by firing them.
which is true if there's
Yeah.
no way to find another role which is better fitting. Exactly. Yeah.
Because that person's unhappy, we're unhappy,
Yeah.
and it could be that person could find something they're super good and super happy at.
Yeah.
Indeed, we're doing both a favor.
A subtopic, small one, and then I want to come to the topic of safety. But the subtopic is, what is your advice in such a situation that, let's say, there's a team of 20, not the whole company, but a department, a team of 20, and let's say it's a software team, engineering team, and then there are 15 people who are okay and they feel okay. 4 people not so happy with the direct manager, the CTO, and one who's a very good developer, but who has a really conflict and hates the guts of the CTO. And now he bypasses the CTO, comes to the CEO and says, listen, the CTO is such a
Buffoon.
yes, either him or you have to choose now. Yes. How do you approach such situation? Because I've seen such situations.
Yes. I think, first of all, culture, again, underlying culture is the most important thing. Why has the culture reached to a point where a programmer thinks so lowly of the CTO that he or she has to come over CTO's head and come to CEO to share his grievance? Already, it's not the best culture, because CTO is doing something wrong. But having said that, but if it's already happened, it's too late. Maybe culture. First thing, in the long term, you got to try to fix the culture. Secondly, in that immediate situation where this guy's him or her or me or else, then I think one of the two things. One is you as the CEO have to figure out who is worth more in the long term, who's more valuable to the company, and make that decision. But that would be the final, absolute last resort. Before that, I think it's worth hearing why this person is so upset with CTO, because sometimes CTO could be the one that's at fault.
Yeah.
Because if I've seen many, it's slightly different, but we had a situation in our client where he was a star salesperson. Yeah. And he's often exceeded his quota by 5-6 times. So if the quota was 1 million, he was doing 5-6 million. But he also had 6 sexual harassment charges against him. And this was not a secret even. He was just very toxic person for the entire department.
But he wasn't the CSO, he was a salesperson.
He was a sales manager.
Yeah, okay.
And so often I think so if you're his boss, you're afraid to let this guy go.
Yeah,
because
he's bringing so much in.
But then in the long term, everybody else in the team leaves. So by him creating this toxic environment in the long term, this guy, by not firing this guy, the CEO or whoever, has done more harm to the department and the company than if they had just let this guy go. Bottom line is, if CTO is toxic person, get rid of him. Sorry. If the strength will be so strong, because there's got to be a reason why this programmer is going all the way to CEO, right? But if this programmer is a toxic guy, then get rid of him.
Yeah. So what you are saying, I think, is super important thing. In the short term, we are drawn to keep the superstars even if they're toxic.
Yes.
But in the even midterm, I think it already gives negative dividends.
Yes.
You need to think of the implications on the culture, other people, and actually be ready to suffer the short-term loss of losing the whatever the person, the superstar was bringing in, but
Right.
let them go if
Yeah.
you cannot. And this means that the CEO also, or any direct manager, has to have this discerning eye to feel. So who is, maybe everyone is a bit toxic, everyone, we have our flaws, but who's more?
Yeah.
Who's more?
So what Honeywell used to do is they had two axes. One is performance, the other one was cultural fit or attitude.
Yeah.
And then within it, if you can imagine the two lines vertically and horizontally, and they fit a particular individual. Okay, this is like superstar, super performer with great attitude. Then they get a lot of promotions and blah, blah, blah. So point is, yes, performance axis is important, but the attitude or the cultural fit axis is all just as, if not more important.
Yeah. Now I want to jump back to the topic of safety.
Mm-hmm.
So you said that we can go and confront if there is this safety built. What do you mean with that? And built how?
So I think safety means two things. Number one, there's no retribution and there's no judgment.
Retribution, can you open up each?
Yeah, so by retribution, let's say, you say, Jin, you're dumb or whatever. Or I made a coffee and you say, Jin, this coffee was not very good.
Okay.
And then I'm thinking,
I'll get back to you.
Exactly. But imagine if the person that wants to get back to you is your boss.
Yeah.
And then no promotion, no raise, all kinds of actions that really hurts your career, your financial situation, your well-being, your sense of well-being. So making sure that there's no revenge, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So when let's say you're my boss and I somehow offend you, you don't grind your axe and you don't sharpen your knives and just you say, no, I don't agree with you, Jin. You're stupid too. We're done.
Or say, the coffee was good. Okay, so this is the one thing. No revenge. And the other?
The other thing, no retribution and then no judgment.
And can you
judgment being, you don't like this coffee. You just don't know what good coffee tastes like. So you're just don't know. You're dumb. Maybe you may not say it to me, but in your mind, you're going through, you don't know what coffee is. So next time I'm not going to offer you coffee.
All right.
That next time I'm not going to offer you coffee is retribution, but making judgment, you don't know what good coffee is a judgment.
Okay, so let me repeat it to myself. So first, it's no revenge, and second, not judging the other person for what he's bringing up. These are two behaviors not to do in order to destroy safety, but what is it there to do to build it up?
Yeah, so let me give a real life example. So when I first came to Netherlands, I came on Sunday and started working on Monday, and the weekend of that week, we're supposed to go to Switzerland for a company retreat. So all 60 employees going to fly over to Switzerland and ski and blah, blah, blah. On Wednesday, so third day after I landed in the Netherlands, CEO sent an email saying, let's do this when we're in the Switzerland. And one of the programmer responded, that's stupid.
Yeah.
And I read this and my head was going boom for literally for 30 seconds. Wow, this is super interesting. And I was really curious how CEO was going to react, because it was reply all to entire company. 2 hours later, CEO sent an email saying everyone is entitled to their own opinion. I go, okay, that's weak, but whatever. But to be honest,
what's the takeaway?
It doesn't end there, by the way. Few months later, the employee the programmer that said that stupid was promoted.
Yeah.
Takeaway is that even though CEO was insulted, embarrassed in front of the entire company, maybe it was an embarrassment in certain culture, but he did not grind an axe and he did not have any retribution for this guy. Quite the contrary, He just shrugged it off, and he was man enough to actually promote this person when his performance actually deserved promotion. So obviously, if I'm that programmer, I felt safe enough to say that's stupid idea,
Yeah.
and still get promoted.
Okay, so this means that you are respecting all the processes and principles, irrespective of where you are, where you're not confronted by
Yes.
the other person.
Yeah. And I think it really boils down to two things: trust and respect. You trust that. So when we talk about culture, I think there's really three things that's important. First thing is belief or assumptions. So what do you believe? For example, do I believe that in order for me to be promoted, I need to perform well, or do I need to kiss my boss's behind?
Yes, yes.
A certain culture will call for you to be a yes man, right? A certain culture, it's not the yes man that gets respect, it's the people who speak the truth that gets respect. So if I believe as an employee that, oh, if I speak the truth, I'm safe and I'll be recognized for what I do.
Yeah.
Then, or scenario two is, well, if I want to get promoted, I have to kiss my boss's ass. Pardon my French.
Yes, yes, I
So,
understand.
so once you have those beliefs, then it drives your behavior. So if I believe that I have to kiss my boss's ass to be promoted, what am I going to do? One of the two things. If I want promotion, either I leave the company or I kiss my boss's ass, even though I know he's wrong or she's wrong. But if I believe that speaking truth is going to get me promoted, then I'm going to speak the truth and I'm going to behave such. And those two areas, depending on the behavior, will eventually yield the results.
Now, I want to reflect on this a bit.
Yeah.
This means that the direct manager who's leading a team member who is speaking the truth, which doesn't feel comfortable, I need to be able to withstand the personal uncomfortableness and not to go into revenge mode. I remember reading one quote that if you say something to me and I feel anger about it, then it might be that I don't like the truth that I'm hearing. Because otherwise, why should I be angry? I will just discuss this matter and counteract. I remember in summer we were gathering one event where many mentors were involved, and one of the mentors confronted me quite heavily, not only my doings but also me as a person. And I remember that I was so angry at that moment because it's natural. I'm a very defensive person by nature. I was so angry I decided I will not even answer anything because I'm too angry to answer anything as a mature person. I went in the weekend to walk by the sea, and then I remembered, I need to respond something to him. And then I asked myself a question: is he doing a good job? Is he serving the clients? And I had the immediate answer, yes, like he's one of the best mentors we have. And that I had immediately my answer, that you are welcome to come to the event and I will process your inputs that you gave me. And later I also read that one of the ways how the power should be used in the company is that the one who has the power should not use it. Basically, you are using the power to inspire other people if necessary, to confront, but not to use a power in terms of, I didn't like what you said, okay, you are out, or you are not getting the promotion. So exactly what you are telling.
Yep.
Is there anything else maybe to conclude the thread of the security, safety, anything else that either to do or not to do that the leader can build up the safety?
Yep, I think so. What is the assumption? What is the belief that the employees, that you're creating for the employees? So is it, truth wins, or is it politics wins, for lack of a better word? And then the belief leads to behavior, and that is the culture.
If I listen to this recording and I recognize, I'm the listener, recognize, I'm also very defensive and sometimes react with revenge just as a reaction, what can I do about it?
That's a great question. Join Cocoon.
Okay, thank you. I will pay you for that. But I think there's some truth in it. Meaning, work with someone whom you trust and respect, and you can bear that they give you their opinions. And yes, because neutrality helps to explore those sensitive topics more openly.
Yep. Imagine you're eating an ice cream, and then someone comes in, takes a big bite of your ice cream.
Okay.
You go, what the hell? But depending on who it is, your reaction would be different. If it's your girlfriend or wife or a child,
it's okay.
Who does it?
Also okay if it's Barack Obama.
Okay. But bottom line is, you already have this relationship with the person, so you say, oh, that's actually cute. But if some weird, Donald Trump comes in, or someone weird, you have no clue who this guy or girl is, and they do that, you'd be like, you wouldn't be eating that ice cream anymore. You'd be not only offended, shocked, and you'd throw it away. So bottom line is, what is your relationship with that person, I think, is really important. So even when same message is being delivered, I think being delivered by someone that the person trusts and respects will have a lot more impact than some random people. There are situations when some random people actually have an advantage. But in general, I think creating environment where you have this sort of a safe, trust, respect, loving relationship is ideal.
Mm-hmm. Let's use the word you just mentioned, loving relationship. Now go back to these pancakes and let's use the last minutes. What I know working as a mentor and myself also, that how things are at home greatly impacts how creative and how composed I can be at work. Sometimes I even say to some clients when it's appropriate that it's the desired state is that you are either in a good relationship or you are single, but you are not for long term in a absolutely not working relationship because it's impacting also the work situation. So maybe you could share some of the things that you have learned and learned yourself, not with the clients, about the marriage life and some maybe hardships you've gone through or some wisdoms that you have gained in your life.
Yeah. So one of the things that I can think of is when I was in high school, 17, 18.
You weren't married then?
No, I wasn't married at the time. I think didn't really have much of a, I don't know what the word is. You can call it self-respect, you can call it confidence. Essentially, what I cared more about was how other people saw me as opposed to how I saw myself.
Yeah.
And I remember one specific incident. I was in university. I came back to the high school, and I was visiting my favorite teacher, Mr. Thaler, or Dr. Thaler. He was my physics and chemistry teacher, anyway, in high school. And he says, "Hey, Jin, what are you doing here?" I should have said, "I came here to see you." But in my insecure state that I was in at the time, I said, "Oh, I just happened to be in the neighborhood," and said some all this nonsense that was stupid. And I think he was disappointed, right? Because I don't know if he knew he was one of my favorite teacher or not, but clearly I wanted to go there and say hello and converse with him, but I ended up saying something that's really stupid, that was not truth. And I remember coming back home that night, and I was so embarrassed about myself. I had blanket over my head. It was summer night because I went there during summer, just before summer holidays. And I had blanket over my head. I was so embarrassed about myself. I was hiding me from myself by having this blanket over me.
Okay.
And I think I struggled through that a little bit, and I read a couple of books, Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, both by Ayn Rand, and also Bible. And at some point, I think I was able to accept me as who I was, with all the imperfection, if you will. And I think that was the beginning of turning point where I tried to care more about how I viewed myself. I think Virginia Woolf famously, I don't know if it's famous, but had a quote, if I recall correctly, that says something to the effect of, "We live in the cages of eyes of other people."
Yeah. Now, how it connects with the happy marriage?
I think because if I don't accept myself first, and if I don't love myself first, it automatically means that you cannot accept anybody else.
Uh-huh.
For me to accept my wife as who or what she is, I need to have accepted myself and also be able to love myself to some degree. Because if you can't love yourself, how can you love others?
But then how do I know, do I accept myself or do I not accept myself? I'm of course now exaggerating, boosting
Sure.
up the question, but
I think there are times when we go up and down. So if we look at the Maslow's pyramid, you have the basic needs of food, clothing, shelter, and all that at the base level. You have the safety, and then you have the love and belongingness, and then you have the self-esteem and then self-actualization. It's, in my opinion, we go back and forth all the time between self-actualization and love and that sense of belongingness. So there are times when we feel relatively not very confident, and then there are times when we feel super confident. So that goes back and forth. Having said that, how we are able to tell when we accept myself versus or not, I think the best test is when you wake up in the morning and you look at yourself in the mirror as you brush your teeth. What is the feeling you get? You get, okay, not bad. That's good. But if you brush your teeth yourself, you go, ugh, I really don't want to see myself. And then you walk away from the mirror, I think there's some issues that you probably want to deal with.
yeah. Okay, this is the obvious issue, but maybe now to complicate the question a bit, imagine, we don't need to imagine, because many founders, C-level people, for years are in that what we can call the valley of struggle. So you start a company, maybe you get to initial traction, and then for years and years you are just struggling and struggling. So there's this daily struggle. Either the traction is not going how it should, or traction has plateaued. So there's years long struggle at work, which obviously impacts the self-image, how I see myself, how good I feel about myself. Yes. And now this spills over most probably at home. Then the wife is like, yeah, you are always busy, thinking, worried, unhappy, blah, blah, blah. And then this impacts that relationship. And I also don't feel good there. No, and then let's say the CEO is then, okay, I don't like what is going there. I don't like what is going here. But maybe I'm good with myself, I don't know. And it's like already complete spaghetti.
Yes.
And then I've heard people say, okay, I will at least divorce. I can do this at least. Yes, I cannot step out from my company, but at least this I can change. But it feels maybe that is not the right thing to do, actually. Because like you're solving business problems with a divorce. It won't change the traction situation. Of course, on the other hand, maybe the relationship is already rotten and it's not fixable. So last minute, super complicated question. What's your take on such situations?
I think in the end, whether it's Wagner said it best, joy comes from within. And I think how I take it is the external circumstances only impact you as much as you let it. So that whether it's happiness or joy or whatever it is, it really should come from within, not dependent on what the external circumstances is.
Yeah.
And it's easier said than done, for sure. But just because I win 100 million euro lottery, is that going to make me happier? Maybe for a couple of days. But I don't think that's really going to be the source of happiness. I don't think money and success is so often happens. We think if we only had this, and that this being external things, once we get there, I don't think we're ever happy. Maybe they did some research, and I think they said car makes you happy for about a month, house makes you happy for about 6 months, but after that, it's whatever.
What about happy wife, happy life?
Yes, I agree. Wife is not a thing, though, right?
Yeah.
I hope not.
No.
But yes, I agree, and I do believe one of the more important thing about the wife also is that you should have the shared values, just like founders. Because if one founder has different values than the other, I guarantee you they'll go separate ways at some point.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I think so. You have to. So I think how I like to think is that there's a principle at the core. Principle being sense of right and wrong. So if wife thinks killing somebody is okay, but you think it's wrong, we have a problem.
There's already a problem with this statement.
Yes. So there's a principle. Outside of that is values. What is important in your life, and what is important in her life? So if she says children is the most important thing in my life, or having fun is the most important thing in my life, versus let's say your value is something else, work is the most important thing in my life. So value plays a role, or if you both say family is the most important thing, work comes secondary, having fun comes secondary, then you have a chance, right? And then outer circle, third circle around that is character. Who are you as a person? Do you have integrity? Do you have honesty? Do you have blah, 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 blah? Your character comes in. And then the last thing is your personality. What I noticed is that if you don't agree on values and principles, but you have a great match on characters and personality, they have so much fun for the first 6 months, but it won't last beyond 2-3 years.
I agreed with this.
Yeah.
Can you a bit explain what's the difference between character and personality in
Yeah,
how
sure.
you see
So
this?
character is who you are, right? Whether it's honesty or integrity, or you could be, those type of things.
Okay.
Personality is, are you a bubbly person? Are you always happy kind of person, or are you like always like serious person?
Okay.
Whatever. Yeah. Or are you party kind of person, or are you more? It could be extrovert, introvert, whatever it is. Where do you derive your energy?
This means almost as if when you start a relationship, you should start with the elaborate personality assessment and then look at those assessments and compare them.
Yeah, so personality matters less than your values and principles.
Okay, I meant
Yeah.
like everything you
Yeah.
shared. Yeah.
Yeah, so like when I dated my wife, before she was my wife, I would ask her, what's the 3 most important things in your life? Because principle-wise, more or less we agree, right? And when I heard her answers, I go, interesting, but yeah, I think I can live with that. None of it was like way off, right?
I just want to add here that I also agree that it is super important to understand for myself what are my values. Mm-hmm. And I look at values that there are 2 types. One is the intrinsic values like integrity, like growth, but also what I value in my life, meaning is it like good art or is it nature or but the other thing is to evaluate, do I live myself up to my values? Because if I make a list of values, but I ignore them myself, it's not proper to confront others around me. Hey, we are not matched in terms of values, because then you are not matched yourself with your values also.
Exactly. Then question would be, are those truly the value that you believe in, or you would like to believe?
Yes.
Yeah.
While we were speaking this last part, I also remembered one quote. Unfortunately, I don't remember the author, but the quote was that men in life, and men meaning both males and females, men in life get not what they deserve, but what they are.
Yeah.
Maybe if there's trouble in the relationship, then also to look what you don't like in the other, how it is also what you are.
Yeah. I'd like to end with this quote. I believe it's by Goethe, that's a German philosopher, where I think he says, it is better to be hated for who you are than to be loved for who you are not.
Yeah, that's very good. That's very good quote. Okay, this means that the topic of self-honesty and using whatever means possible not to live in self-deception. It's very important.
Yeah, and to your point, yeah, you're exactly. I completely agree with you. Of all the people that we can deceive, I think ourselves are the easiest ones to deceive.
And quite hard to see where deceiving.
Yes. Yeah.
But let's end with this call to action. Be honest with yourself.
Yes. Or join Cocoon.
Which will lead there,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah.
Another 20 euros, please.
Okay, Jin. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Farhad.